I love how you went like, I can vent.
I love venting.
Oh, crazy. It's my last day in Bali. And I'm getting to spend time with all of my favorite people who, helped me in this last month. And the conversation has sort of been around gratitude and, not being entitled and all of that.
Don't get me started.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
We're back again. Round 2.
Round 2.
Yeah. So lovely to have you here again, because the last time we had so much fun, we just decided that we are going to do a round 2.
We had to.
Because our last conversation actually stopped at a point which was really interesting for me, which was around, culture and how that plays like such a huge part, and we couldn't take it forward in that flow. But the interesting part was that we continued that conversation at the pantry for another 40-45 minutes.
Where no one was listening.
And that's when we decided that
part 2 was born.
Yeah. I'll let you take lead on this because there is no script, and I would love for you to vent.
Yeah, the guest becomes the host. I mean, break all the rules.
Yes. By the rules.
Yeah. Okay, I guess the point that we were kind of skirting around when we last spoke outside was the idea of ignorance.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And how the people we meet, there's this fine line between ignorance and what's the other one? There's an entitlement, there's ignorance, and then I guess there's stupidity.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
It was there, but I don't want to say.
No, well, I don't know. You don't know how many snowflakes are watching or listening. But honestly, it's, I was sharing with Shreya that when I went to university, there was a couple people who would ask me if I lived in a bamboo house coming from Indonesia. And that when I looked confused trying to answer this as seriously as possible, I was also holding a knife and fork, which meant that someone asked me if I knew how to use those.
Oh my God.
But I was just confused by why they were asking me why I loved bamboo.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of the first time where I was like, okay, dealing with people my age, from a different culture. I was in the UK. They knew their area. This is the thing. I think when you have people who have a high EQ can start to create that empathy.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? So instead of me being really angry about it, I actually made myself guilty for not knowing more about the UK. They're like, oh, I'm from Middlesbrough. It's 200 miles down the road, turn left, right, next to the giant Wakefield, whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know where that is.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm ignorant.
Yeah.
So I don't know. When it comes to these things, I actually I deal with ignorance, case by case.
Okay.
And in that sense, I was like, well, I don't know these people. I need to get to know them better. They're not being malicious. They're not trying to be mean. But it was just such a silly thing to hear.
Yeah.
So that was that case.
Yeah. I think you tend to give people the benefit of doubt far more. When I came here in Bali, and this is as real as it gets, that there was a point in time when I had 11 euros in my bank account. Okay. And I was like, you know what?
You had 1 more euro than me. Sorry. Just joking.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's a situation.
Yeah. And, that sort of, and having that sort of grit, I would say that, you still want to move forward, and, in moments like these. So I brought that whole conversation around entitlement, and, I was just telling Anton and B that, I know that my parents can help me and they've offered to help me, but I don't want to take that. So when you brought that whole point of, people who are emotionally, the EQ factor of it, you just tend to yes, you show that kindness to everybody else, and like you are an empath by nature, but has it ever happened with you that you fail to show that to your own self?
I mean, I think there's a daily battle on small things, and then there's probably a lifelong battle, right? Between what your ego wants and what you should do, and how those two things conflict. I want to ask money from my parents, but I want to show them show them and myself that I can make it without it. And that, the thing is, like, the thing about entitlement is it's those who do come from a privileged background, it's kind of like it's very difficult to escape that word, right? And everybody you meet, there are three positions. They're above you on the economic scale, same as you or below. And it's very difficult to find someone who's exactly where you are, right? So you end up placing them above or below, and you're either going to get judged and called, oh, you're a privileged person, or they're above you and they don't call you anything, but maybe you're doing the same thing to them, and it's always like this shifting all the time. But for me, I always see it from a point of view of, as soon as I catch myself like comparing, then that's where things have to start kick in. It's like, I stop thinking like that, like reverse the thought, and little things that I would do just to stop making myself feel negative about the situation, judging others, and start to feel a bit more, I think, more curious about the scenario, about yourself and about the other person, and how that dynamic plays out. It's more interesting that way, because then if you're like, well, I'm this and they're this, you're just putting people in boxes, and it doesn't make it right. But if you're on a kind of journey of discovering what this whole thought pattern is, and more about yourself, that's always much better. Right. But entitlement and feeling entitled is bad. I think feeling privileged, this is for me very complex to like navigate. I've only recently started kind of like taking more
learning.
Exactly, steps to learn all of this stuff. And I don't know, I always get stuck in certain points in this conversation. You go, well,
like, just that sometimes there are things that you have to do, not what you want to do.
Exactly. See, I think that's where the privilege and the entitlement amongst maybe a couple of the current generation that's coming up now, is that they think that things can be now easy and forever. And no, everything is dynamic. Things are all a challenge. And there is no cookie cutter true what do you call it, formula for life. And my little brother, I'm very proud of him. From an early age, he was following this group on YouTube called Yes Theory. And Yes Theory essentially started out as a channel where they say yes to everything. Right? And it was like a cool challenge kind of, and it grew and grew and grew, and it blew up. And they started making merch, and the merch is called Seek Discomfort. And I was like, wow, I can't believe my little brother's 11 years younger than me, so he's now in his just early 20s. And at the time, he was only like 14, 15, and he was already kind of like entering this mindset of seeking discomfort. I was like, okay, he's going to be fine. He's definitely going to be fine. And, while he has those pockets of, or those moments where he feels like he can tap into the privilege a little bit, I think those are the moments where he's calculated that that's okay. Right? It's like, oh, mom and dad, I need money for these kind of lessons. They're always justified. It's not like, oh, buy me a Lamborghini. It's never on that scale.
Of course.
So I feel like it's going through life and feeling like everything is just okay and it's easy, and there's no satisfaction out of the end point. It's like,
There is no end point.
There is no end point. It's comfort is coasting.
Yeah.
You're always just moving along, and things don't really change that much.
Yeah.
You're not even compelled to change the formula that you currently have.
Yeah.
Right? That's comfort.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think moving forward and figuring out whether you can live on $11 or 11 euros is the challenge, because in the back of your mind, sure, there is an element of privilege of saying like, oh, if this doesn't work out, I can, and there will be a safety net.
Yeah.
But I think exercising that is much better than not exercising that option.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
So
no, 100%. And I think I definitely, that's my philosophy behind it, that, if like, even the reason that I'm saying this is because, people see the good part, and yes, like, my life looks great. It is great, to be fair. And just for context, there are things that have been paid for in advance, that, like, I don't have to worry about the basics. Like, there's going to be, like, I will have a roof, I will have paid for my rentals and all of that. So can I survive on 11 euros is like a big question that, it's more existential. That do I actually, need more than this? And I mean, like, there's two ways of looking at it, that there is obviously one way that, this person's a fool and eccentric and all of that. But there's also, like, exactly what you said, that if I can make that, work right now, then come what may, I'm never going to be attached to what comes. And yeah, I think that is the whole mindset that I personally think has worked for me in like, sort of detaching myself from the whole privilege and comfort and all of that. And then, it also makes me wonder, when I meet people like you and everybody else that I've met, everybody says the same thing, that the journey is never linear. It is going to be like in waves. So there are going to be good times and there are going to be difficult times. And yeah, just navigating around there.
Whenever someone describes the journey towards something, I actually had to give a talk about like this entrepreneurial journey that I've been on, and I basically had one slide that had a scribble, like I had a thing, and it was a scribble all over the place, and then like an end. And I told the kids, I was like, anybody who thinks that entrepreneurialism is a straight line is incorrect. Anybody who thinks that entrepreneurialism is up and down is incorrect. It's forward, back, up, down, left, right,
it's
back.
Like, what the fuck is happening?
It's you're thrown around all over the place. And that's what you have to contend with, is that you may in a week lose a month of progress, and you have to be okay with that. Right. And this is, I think business is one of the things that teaches you that there are so many things outside of your control, and that you have to bite down on reality and move forward. You have to. The more that you dwell, in fact, I've turned more stoic after doing all of this than ever.
100%.
Right. My first few years of arriving in Bali, actually the first year that I moved to Bali, I needed help finding a place. I was working for an architect called Popo Danes. Firstly as an intern, but I was like, I actually don't know where to live. Where should I go? And he said, somewhere just outside of Sanur.
Far.
Well, his office was over in Sanur, so and he got his staff to like put me somewhere and just look after him. So I think rent was like 1.5 mil for the month, which was cheap and affordable, and I was on an intern, a little bit of intern money, which was great. But after living there for a year, my dad was like, I'm gonna come visit your place, can you show me where it is? So I bring him there, and I remember he walked in, he sat on my bed, and he looked at me and goes, "A year of this?" I was like, "Whoa, it's not that bad." He's like, I wouldn't live here.
Yeah.
Like, how come you didn't tell me you were living like this? I was
Yeah.
like, I don't think I'm just 4 walls. There's a double bed. There's a bathroom. I think there's worse places to live.
Yeah.
But just like you're saying, that your parents put themselves in a situation to try and better your future.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
always see something
Yeah.
that's meant to be better for you than what they had.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But what you're experiencing and what I experience is like, well, I need to test the limits of my comfort. It's like, what am I going to allow to happen? Am I going to eat some shitty food and feel sick for a week? Okay, let's see. Let's see what color my diarrhea is.
Exactly what came
hashtag. No, don't turn that into a hashtag. But you see, you were on the same page. I'm preaching to the choir. But those are the scenarios. One, I felt like kind of proud that my dad had to say that to me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you know what? I can actually stick it out. It's fine. You know, to his standard. For me, I was like, it's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Talk to me about one of what according to you was the most or one of the most difficult phases of your journey in this, getting this far, entrepreneurship, or like just figuring life out sort of stuff.
I definitely think that the biggest struggle is it's still figuring out what people want, right?
Okay.
Even if you make a business and it fits an archetype of types of people, my brain every single day is pulling that idea apart and kind of trying to recombine it to fit with the times.
Yeah.
But, the more people you speak to, the idea changes ever so slightly. Oh, they need this and they need that. And that can drive me crazy, but that's the challenge that I accept. I want to constantly figure out whether these are the correct mics and if this is the setup that people need, And even if I'm thinking about, I want to start another business, what would that be? What is that product? How does it serve them? Like that to me is like a big challenge. I think I don't let the idea of like sales being hard, something like sure, it's a barrier, but it's one of those things that I think I can always overcome. But it's like the perfectionist in me wants the product to be perfect. And that is the hardest part. Right? So I think that for me in that journey is but on the personal side, if it's outside of business, I feel that the thing that I struggle with is probably I'm definitely a people pleaser. I want everyone to be like, are you okay? Like, do you need anything? I'll go out of my way to help people. And I don't think that'll ever stop. And it's exhausting for people.
Okay.
And sometimes for myself. Right? You'll do something at the wrong time. You didn't need to do that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think those are the kind of two challenges that I deal with.
It's so interesting because I was just going to ask you that, how do you deal with it when you have to say no? And then, just before that, you were like, people pleaser.
Yeah. I'm learning fast.
Okay.
How to like say no and what fits. Because I started taking a breath. Because I was doing everything, shall we say, in one breath. And a question would come in and I'd be like, yes. But now I'm like, let me think about it.
Okay,
I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
And that gives me the moment to kind of squish my people-pleasing tendency back into the box and pick which box I actually want to kind of like let the demon out or whatever. But that was really important. I think we were talking before that we should choose to respond and not react. Right?
Yeah.
And that every time when there's a request, I'm like, respond. Like, don't understand, because responding means understanding first.
Yeah.
So that philosophy has kind of like driven what I'm kind of trying to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How about you?
Around what?
No, in terms of like when people say no, no is the definition of, well, you could say that no can be a rule-breaking statement,
Okay. Like, how do I take a no or how do I say a no?
Both.
Both. I think saying I'm a very direct person.
Yeah, it's easy for you.
Yeah, it's very like, in fact, I think I'm like, sometimes if somebody doesn't know me very closely, or if they haven't taken the time to actually understand me, then they see me as somebody who's very, what's the right word? I don't think rude is arrogant.
Oh, they think that
Yeah.
you're arrogant.
Yeah, I've gotten that a lot. I've actually I'm like, you know what, cannot be bothered to clear that out because I know why I said no.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like in terms of that, that's not an issue. And about taking a no, this is so interesting because ever since I started, like my freelancer and entrepreneurial journey and all of that, I think I enter situations already expecting a no.
Okay.
So, like, I've trained my mind because, like, you've interacted with me. I sometimes come with the most outrageous requests that I make to people. And I'm like, just for example, asking you, I had no fucking clue, that you would actually say yes to be on the podcast. But I was like, just ask. The worst thing in this scenario is that he says no. You're already prepared for it.
Okay. That's your mindset.
Yeah,
through across the board, from
I think personal, professional, everywhere, and like, yeah, earlier you was mentioning something around stoicism. So, like, is it stoicism?
stoicism.
Yeah, stoicism.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think like without the intention, somehow my mindset has always been like that. I don't know, just what I've observed around me and all of that. So, I was very sort of detached in a certain sense. So, yeah, it's not that.
I think for me, there's different scenarios where I having an expectation drives me to want it more and fight for it more. And then quite often I adopt the same thinking, which is like, expect the worst, and anything above baseline is positive.
Yeah, exactly.
So you never feel like down and out, right? I prefer to default for scenario one, which is to expect and fight for something that you want, because then you have the passion for it, and you're going to get it.
Yeah.
But then it opens up all this other stuff. Once you get it, you feel like it's disingenuous, or like it wasn't meant for you because you had to fight for it. There's different types of there's different personality types that lead or lend to different outputs. Which box opens? You're like, oh shit, not that one. I didn't mean to open that one. So
yeah, crazy. It's so interesting because, like, when you said that, I just realized that of course there is a balance. And by balance I mean that I think subconsciously I already make a judgment around situations where I have that expectation. That, like when it wasn't that, first interaction I asked you, like, I had a bunch of conversations with you where I felt comfortable enough that yes, there is a vibe. And sometimes it happens just in a click. Like, with some people you can just tell that I don't think it would change anything in our dynamic, even if this person has to say no.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
There's like nothing to lose, and you're
exactly.
like, yeah.
And
No, that's good.
yeah, it's so interesting because, like earlier this day, I'm just been having a crazy day, like in a good sense, because there's this DJ that I've been trying to sort of, and it's so interesting. Yesterday when we were talking, I told you about this specific genre.
Yes, yeah.
He's the one through whom I got introduced into it.
Oh, okay.
And somehow, like, long story short is that I might interview him on my podcast.
Okay, very cool. Very cool.
And that just happened like this. Like, I just made a request because it just so happened that I was listening to his music in the car back in India, and then I was with my cousin, and he said, "Oh, he's a friend of ours. Like, we went to university together or something." I was like, "What?"
That's crazy.
And then I was like, "Okay, let's just make these requests, okay?" And then one thing, it was so quick. It happened in the last 2-3 days. So I'm like, yeah, I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Sometimes when things happen so quickly like that, you feel like your mind is still catching up to the
Yeah.
reality of things. You're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
oh, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's like,
And
what?
yeah, I was like, what is happening? Because, like, there's a WhatsApp group, and he was like, hi, Shreya, hi, nice to meet you. I was like, what?
He's saying, meet me to me. How do I respond?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think, like, it's also about being open to, like,
Yeah.
let's just live, sort of.
I mean, honestly, my dad, he always tells me to expect the unexpected, which sounds like one of the most Irish, strange sayings to ever be uttered. But like, yeah, whatever could happen can happen, like Murphy's Law, right? Or whatever will happen does happen.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm butchering
Negative.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird because I have this constant inner dialogue of like thinking, oh, it's going to be like this. And then you just constantly have this back and forth, which is like, oh, if I'm being too hard on pushing this, does it mean that I'm going to get complacent and I oh, it's going to happen, which means I sit back.
Yeah.
I learned the hard way when I was at high school. I was actually lovely guys. I was hanging out with these guys, but they were very wealthy and very smart guys as well. And I was a little bit too distracted with hanging out with them that I didn't really focus on how I needed to kind of progress through life.
Right.
Or through high school and study. And I'm like that studious type. I need to like do the work, pass the exam, don't do the work and think that I can get through it.
Right.
Whereas they were coasters, but they got through it and they got points and all of that. And I remember thinking to myself like, oh man, I got complacent to the point where, I didn't get into my preferred university. I got thrown into what do you call it? Clearing in the UK. Clearing is basically a bucket of students who failed to meet the requirement, and then a university, like some kind of, from Toy Story, like the claw that comes down, like plucks you out and says, "Did you want to come to our university?" And that's exactly what happened to me. I didn't think that was going to happen, and that idea of being complacent about things that you want now scares me. I'm like, oh, I don't want to sit back. So you want to be proactive. You want to like you're a go-getter. You want to just make it work.
Yeah. I think there's so much excitement in that also, because for me somehow the whole attitude towards failure, or not getting what you're going behind, has also changed.
Yeah.
Because the narrative has entirely become more around the journey. Yeah. How much fun are you having? Like, how much are you, like, every project now has become like that do it because you want to do it, and not because you're so attached to how it's going to be. And just with this podcast, so much has changed from the initial idea. And I'm just having fun, and good. I think people can tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always amazing to see people who are willing to shift and be dynamic with their ideas. Exactly. Don't shapeshift like a lizard person, but but yeah, honestly, you have been like that. You're like, oh, if it has to be like that, then cool, we'll do it like that. So be it. It's a great mindset to have, and not be, I've met a lot of people here that they're like, it must be like this. It's like, once again, like I have that thinking, and I'm like, wow, so determined.
Yeah.
Like that's my thinking.
Yeah.
But then as the conversation progresses and there's no middle ground, I'm like, okay, this person's stubborn. It's like, who am I to call someone's journey like too stuck in their ways that they won't, like maybe that's what they want. But when they're met with scenarios where it's like what you have asked of people is something that can't be delivered at a budget or a time scale or whatever, and you're not flexible, then I feel like That's where you're either ignorant, stupid, or
what
was the other one? Entitled. Yeah. And and if you can see all three, damn, I think that you're a balanced person.
Yeah.
You know?
I think I have been on each of those spectrums that all of us have, I would say.
I wouldn't say all. You mean us two? Maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe.
Maybe. I think stupid not so much, but ignorant and entitled for sure. I think, and for me, it took that learning to, and it's not around professional life. It's more around personal journeys that this has to be like this.
Yeah.
And it only sort of takes zooming out of it and seeing it that, okay, there's so many different ways this can be done.
Yep.
And I think that flexibility to, be able to, okay, yes, you want a certain outcome, but is this the only way this could be done? And then
exactly.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I do that a lot. I'm like, I have a thought. I'm like, breathe in. No. What you say about zooming out is always the analogy that I use. When I feel like I'm freaking out about how something should be, understanding how it fits in the grand scheme of things makes it look really stupid that you're complaining about this one thing. And it's great for perspective. It's so good. You either shut up immediately or you double down.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And if you double down, you got to zoom out way further at that point, right?
Yeah. To see what else it impacts and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. What do we talk about next?
So I'd like to talk about if we're talking about rules, what rules do you think we as society should break?
There's so many, George. How could you even ask this question?
What? From you, I want to hear it. I know one rule you've broken already from the past episode. So,
okay.
What's one thing?
Fuck you.
I'm holding it against you now because you're taking too long. No. What's the thing that's holding us back? What's like a rule that you think is just like, come on, like we'd be so much further?
I think everybody needs to live for themselves. Psychologically, we're always putting somebody else first. And especially I can only speak from my context and, people who I can relate to because they come from like a conservative culture of sorts. And that idea of you needing to please somebody else is so ingrained in us. Like, just for example, when you say you're a people's pleaser, so my mind just goes into the entire psychology of it and, like from all that I've read in literature, that how does it come and where does it stem from? And then that is one big rule I think collectively as a society we need to sort of break, that you're not born to please anybody else. And sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow because that includes your parents.
100%. That's the first people you should bring up when you're people pleasing or whatever.
Yeah, and I think like it's so deeply rooted in, I don't remember if I was speaking about it or writing about it, but our relationship with our parents impacts every area of our life. And it has been studied upon, it has been psychologically, so it's not something I'm just saying because I want to sound cool, but
you do sound cool.
That's a different story. But yeah, like that, I think as and sometimes that's not that's sort of looked down upon when somebody starts putting themselves first. That, okay, this is something I want to do because this makes me happy. And that could involve career choices, that could involve your partner's choice, that could involve where you want to stay, what you want to do with your life, and it might not be what somebody else thinks should be done.
You're reminding me of like a story from when I was younger. I think I was like 8 and my middle brother was 6. We were on a family holiday in Lombok, one island along, and we woke up. I think we were sharing a room with my parents, and my mom and dad were like, since you boys are up first, go get showered and changed and go to the buffet and you two can go on your own. And it was the first time we were given freedom.
Yeah.
We like looked at each other and we're like, yeah, we get to go before our parents.
Crazy. Yeah.
And just before we closed the door, I could hear my dad saying, it's like, just make sure you choose good balance of food, okay, guys?
That was it.
Clearly, I'm the only one that heard this statement.
Yeah.
So by the time we get to the buffet, I select my food. I'm sticking to the rules. Little 6-year-old or 8-year-old, no, 6-year-old Eddie comes back to the table with literally just one dinner plate of a mountain of bacon.
So cute.
This was his one chance.
Yeah. Crazy.
Mind you, at this age, I think he was already like 40 kilos or something. Okay. He was a big boy.
Okay.
He didn't need a mountain of bacon.
Poor Eddie.
Poor Eddie.
Sorry, Eddie.
I was jealous because I was like, oh, you got balls, man. I'm sitting there with some fruit and some pancakes and my high metabolism. And my dad walks over and basically slaps him on the butt and just says, what the hell, how dare you abuse the freedom. Do you think this is good for you? You said you could choose anything. We go to buffet, blah, 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 blah. And he got sent back to the room. And he got disciplined. Well, maybe he snuck a couple pieces of bacon in his pants. I'm not sure. He made it back hungry.
Oh, poor thing.
And, that was the first time where I was actually very cognizant, where usually we used to do everything together, and I'd stay stuck by the rules, and he broke the rules. And
he got a whacking.
And he got a whacking, and I was like, interesting. I was like, some rules cannot be broken when it comes to your parents.
Crazy.
But of course, things change.
I think if I can I don't want to change my answer, but I want to add another, which is like, break all rules. Like,
just do it.
If there's one rule that you can break, or everybody should break, is that break all the rules that in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And by that I don't mean with a rebellious attitude, because exactly what Eddie did, it wasn't rebellion, right?
No, it was pure desire. He was just so happy. He could have put maple syrup on that bad boy if he wanted. If he just had the thought. I think he was just
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the entire idea behind by the rules also. The entire narrative. Now I have no control on how it will be perceived, right?
Yeah.
So somebody who knew me in my childhood would definitely associate it with like a rebel and rule breaker and that kind of a narrative. But that's so far from what it is. Because for me it's like that curiosity. And when there are no rules, then you get to choose for yourself. Like, if I want a heap of bacon, that's my choice, and I'll deal with the consequences.
True. I mean, okay, so I think this is where a good discussion comes out of, because I think we can go pretty meta here.
Yeah, go.
Because by breaking the rules, there are actually rules to how you should break the rules.
Okay.
Because someone's like, thou shalt not kill, and someone's like, fuck the rules, boy. You're dead. It doesn't work that way.
Dang it.
Exactly. So I guess we can apply like common sense, right?
Yeah, obviously.
Common sense is just don't let your actions hurt others.
Yeah, or yourself.
Or yourself.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be overly destructive. Or at least destructive to the degree of a mountain of bacon, and that's it. That's just how much, just a little cholesterol overload every once in a while.
Exactly. I think it also allows room for, like, obviously there are certain rules. Rules essentially were put in place for your own good.
Yeah.
Like, I think that was the initial thought, that nobody thought that they would be restricting. And if you go back to, okay, why was this in place? There is a good reason.
Yeah. Always
But I think what happens is that because we're moving so fast and everything's changing so fast, and not everybody's the same. So how do you expect that same rule to apply to everybody? Or, how do you expect that there's so many rules that are obsolete now?
Yeah.
And especially coming from like a, cultural context from India and all of that. No, there is no only math science, there is so much. So that is one rule, and there is no 9 to 5 kind of a concept. And there's so many rules like that. But yes, of course, when the light is red, you fucking stop. You don't go, like.
True. Yeah.
So traffic rules and stuff like that obviously makes sense. But again, the thing about common sense, that I think it's more around having that independence in thinking.
Yeah.
That does this rule make sense to me?
I mean, not to be, I'm going to be totally not politically correct, but like, stupid people don't know. Like, honestly, if you don't know what's right or wrong, you're going to probably, there's a high chance you'll choose the wrong one.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But so you're talking about like, we need to be educated in the area of, I think common sense needs to be taught. There's a level of common sense, right?
Yeah, I think I would agree. There's varying amounts.
It's like we all know not to spit in a church, for example. It's like that's disrespectful. But no one says, hey, you shouldn't spit in the church. It's like it could just compulsively come up one day. Right? But yeah, it's that level of education is important to a certain degree. And that, I think, starts with mums and dads who, in turn, their mums and dads actually,
that's like, that goes back so far that I don't know. This is a personal philosophy that I have taken 100% onus on myself.
Okay, all right.
Now, like, I'm like, it's okay. Whatever they did, and whatever has been done has been done.
Yep.
What you can do is look forward and like, just live your life on your terms, man. Nobody's gonna come save your ass when it's on fire. So it's as simple.
I will. I'm a people pleaser.
Only you would, George.
Yeah, exactly. Just putting it out there.
Interesting.
But
so what was one thing that you regretted, which was absolutely an outcome of people pleasing, that you couldn't undo?
A specific situation?
Whatever, like, which had a big impact, like, it could be professional, personal, financial, whatever.
I think I haven't done much reflecting these days, so dig deep into the archive. I think there's I feel a certain amount of regret for actually not helping my father more. Or my mom and dad, they work together. And of the years that they've had their business, I think I've only really contributed 1 year. And that 1 year was actually still a bit more about molding me for my future business while also helping them. Counter to that is my middle brother, the bacon guy. He's now dedicated close to 10 years working in the company. And I've seen them at highs and, after COVID, lows. And there is not a single day where I'm like, how can I contribute more in a way that my tools or my brain works with for them. Right. And I think I regret taking action on that. Now, your question is like, from your people pleasing, what I'm saying is, if I'm giving so much energy to quite a lot of strangers that I don't know, I feel like I've wasted my energy and I've directed it in the wrong direction. I've put it in the wrong direction in some senses. I know that, like, here we've impacted lots of people in terms of their lives.
You are impacting me and so many people who are going to be listening.
God dang it, you better feel impacted. But when you look at the end of the day, when you look at yourself and the extension of you, which is your family, you feel, like, could I have taken a bit of that and like sent it over that way? Because maybe they could use that. And it always bounces back, they want to have something for you. And that's the kind of relationship that always kind of, it stands the test of time. Right? There'll be some reciprocal energy always from there. strangers come and go, and it's a beautiful thing, right? Like I didn't know you, now I know you really well, and you're gonna keep coming back. We have a reciprocal thing.
We're gonna know each other for the rest of our lives, George.
Exactly. But the whole point is that there are some people that don't particularly have this connection, and they disappear into the night. And those are the people who are like, did I put a little bit too much energy into that when I could have just redirected it? I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes me very curious about what I'm going to ask you next, which is that I get where you're coming from, and it just makes me want to pick your brain so hard on that.
Go.
I hope it doesn't push some buttons, or even if it does. But like, do you think there's this sense of responsibility that you feel, because nobody's asking you to, until and unless it's specifically said that, hey, George, we need your help, and the business is suffering and all of that. So I'm just curious that, do you think that's more like a self-narrative that you're telling yourself? Or?
I definitely think that there is this fantasy in my brain where you feel like at a certain point you could feel like the hero. That's the ego side of things. Like, oh, you're coming to save.
Yeah.
But actually, I've kind of like delved into that a little bit, and I feel like even if it was a small bit of help that there is no recognition for, like, that's something I should be doing. That's why I regret kind of not making it count when I could have, or being distracted. But yeah, honestly, it's especially in my family, we're high communicators. We communicate a lot.
Amazing, I love that.
Yeah. And it's great, and there's ups and downs, but mostly ups.
Yeah.
And we avoid a lot of breakdowns, relationship breakdowns, because we're able to, like, collectively, not one-on-one, it's not like me versus this other person. Everybody gets in, and they all weigh in and say, hey, well, hold on, have you looked at it from this angle? Like that's bring your tone down a little bit, or like, we're all just having a discussion, it's okay.
I love that. Yeah.
And so that to me, it helps to think that I'm like, okay, my contribution is navigating verbally through things, or thinking through problems.
Yeah.
But once again, it's really about action, which through this whole project yourself, you're like, it's about action. So get into a studio, invite people in, talk to them. So yeah.
Very interesting. I would have never sort of expected that kind of an answer.
Really? What do you mean?
No, I mean, like, for me, how do I put this? I thought it would be more around, like some decision that you already took, which did not turn out, in a certain, like, or had a heavy impact in the sense. But this is like, you sort of, and I'll tell you why it's interesting, because just in another conversation with Brenda, she was there. In fact, it's on the other episode where she says that, in the end, you'll only regret the things you never did. And it's never the things that you've already done.
I agree.
And I was like,
Yeah. The thing is, like, we learn to accept what has been done.
Yeah.
And, that's the stoic element in us as well, which is like, you can't rewrite history.
Yeah.
But you can write your future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I don't believe that fate is something has been decided for you. You carve your own path. And whoever wants to call that, oh, well, whatever we've arrived to is your fate. It's like, you didn't know that. No one has a crystal ball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, be positive in the direction you go. But just as Brenda said, it's like, we are regretful of the paths we didn't take.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And around there, what was one of the toughest decisions that you've made on this journey of being where you are? And by that, I mean just from, say, since adulting to where you are today, in like where you had to really turn stoic. Because just for context, I don't think he gives off the stoic vibe when you meet him first. Like,
no, maybe. What do you? Okay, I want to know what is the what do I give off? Am I like happy-go-lucky?
Yeah, you're very happy-go-lucky.
Yeah.
Like, easy guy, easy to, like hang around with and easy to have a conversation with. So, yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, okay, the way I say, I'll get back to your question,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, go ahead.
based on that, I always think that stoicism should only really be the conversation or the connection between your conscious and your subconscious and your heart. So it shouldn't really emanate outwards.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to emanate outwards, right? But through your actions. Oh,
Yeah.
he did this, something bad
Yeah.
happened, but he got on with it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that you can pay attention to,
100%.
which means that your character can still flourish. I'm in certain situations, I'm very much like an ambivert. So it's like, when there's this exciting situation, I'm like, hey, whoa, like, happy-go-lucky, let's go. And then it gets serious, I'm like, slow down. I know how to respond to different environments. But yeah, I a lot of people say that I have a very calm and exterior and but that's the whole point, is that if you're trying to be stoic, I use the word trying because I don't think you're ever 100%.
Yeah.
If you're trying to be stoic, you're dealing with it on your own, between here and here, right? And it suddenly, if you let it slip or you let it come out, I feel like that's your ego winning, because you're like, sympathize for me, like, I'm going through this, and then but it's allowed, you're allowed to slip out every once in a while. Like, we had a rant before just now,
I
right?
love that.
Just let it come out, and you're like, oh, I'm frustrated. Okay, cool. But that's not about like the ego wanting to come out. You were like, literally like, say it, rant. I'm like, all right, I will.
I looked at
Here you
your
go.
face and I was like, something's off about this guy today.
Wore my hair differently. So yeah, I mean, I think that's how I view it. It's like, I try hard to make sure that the things that affect me personally should not emanate too much outwards, right? And we're X amount of time into this podcast, and I'm like, I don't have the same character that I did when I walked through that room, right? You have to shake it off. It's literally. So okay, your question.
My question was,
what was the hardest?
I was asking you that when was it, like, what was the hardest situation where you were, you had to practice stoicism, and now that you've given this entire context, but like the slipping away and stoicism, how did you balance it? What was that like?
I know exactly the moment, actually, but I wasn't focused on stoicism. I was focused on, I guess, X amount of practices from it.
Sure.
But I didn't know that was what it was called. So when I finished high school, I went through the claw moment, got picked up, put into a university, had to say yes. Not had to, but I said yes. I wanted to be somewhere. And that's where the cultural shift happened. I went to the UK as a British citizen, but got treated as a foreigner.
Right.
And it was the complete polar opposite of being in Indonesia, where I'm in the country I grew up for 20 something years as a foreigner, but want so bad to be called an Indonesian. But then now I'm in this inverted scenario. And it was something I had to grapple with so hard. And I had to, like, I don't know, I felt like I constantly was trying to convince myself that I was fitting in. But then I would always catch myself being on the outskirts.
Right. Oh, that must be terrible.
It was really weird. Really weird. And I ended up with just like two close friends who didn't really give a shit about culture or economic status or anything like that. And we just wanted, people that you just were like, oh, they're just people. They want to have fun. They want to have a good conversation, eat good food, hang out. They were also like pretty good at studying as well. So they're like, okay, we just get on with it. Basically the types that don't just piss life away, right? So it was close to them. But throughout, when they weren't around, it was still very, like, why did I feel like I had to, like, get my compass out and navigate within my own country? And I couldn't figure out the people. I couldn't figure out, like, love. I couldn't
Yeah.
figure out. I honestly, like, I was all over the place. I felt like I remember thinking, like, I feel like I'm reinventing myself in a bad way.
Okay.
Because I didn't know who I was.
Right.
I had to, like, start labeling elements of
Wow.
me.
Yeah.
And it was, so that's where I was like, man, this is the biggest transition, you know, with an asterisk. It's still very privileged. I'm at university, and you know, you can't really complain about all of these things. But to feel very lost from an identity point of view, I think it's crippling. It's really confusing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I would revert back and say, like, my biggest regret was not doing the high school stuff more seriously to land me in a position where I wanted to be and charted my own path. And I let someone else, or actually I dictated my own future by going down a road where it was filled with complacency. And it wasn't, I don't know, it jolted me. Because I was like, I remember sitting in my small dorm with some friends that were at the time convinced I was still living in bamboo houses, and just being like, what the fuck have I landed myself in? How? I'm like, I hate this. Why do I feel like this? What's going on? You know, and for being such a family orientated, you know, I'm sure like you guys are also very family orientated, right?
Yeah. In my heart, yes.
Exactly.
In my heart, yes.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like you miss your folks. You know, you're away for a while. The one thing that gives you a level of identity is like who you say your family are, what we represent, our values, our beliefs, and that was so far away.
It's so beautiful that our conversation has come back to sort of the same point where we, you know, like the other day it started where we were discussing exactly this, and you asked me, you were just curious around why my friends in Paris are all Indians, or, you know, like all Desis. And this is exactly, I feel like, and luckily I never put myself in a position where I was even trying to, you know, say sort of fit in, or I was like, you know, this is what the package is, you know, like you like it, you take it, if not, bye bye. But and it's so beautiful the way you put it, that, you know, the heart always wants to feel at home with family, and that's exactly the reason why, you know, my community in Paris and everybody who lives there around me. So yeah, I absolutely get. And when I look at people, or, you know, when I hear your story, it honestly makes me feel very, you know, emotional in a certain sense, because I know what that would feel like. I know of people who find themselves in that sort of struggle. Okay, where am I? Where do I fit? And, you know, not being able to sort of find it within themselves, and not having the people outside also. So yeah.
I mean, my middle brother and I, we've talked about this to such a degree, because I think we're very observant. We look at a lot of people. We have a lot of international friends, and we're always analyzing, like, why do people become the way that they are, right? Or at least the current version that they are right in front of us. And for the most part, like, we see a lot of the mixed kids, and a lot of them are like chameleons. You put them in any situation, they have to adapt. They have to quickly understand what's going on. And I feel like that is rooted in this constant identity crisis. Who am I? Where do I belong? What's going on? And you always have to be like, oh, do I belong here? Let me try this out. Am I part Mexican? Should I, like, do the Mexican stuff? And, you know, oh, no, I'm not. You learn you're not. Obviously, you're not. So I'm Indonesian. Maybe I should try to integrate myself in that. Oh, okay. There's a limit to that. You know, there's a limit to me. So you start to understand, like, okay, I can kind of hang out with anybody, but I know that.
Dude, this reminds me of this very funny story that a friend of a friend, like, I was sitting with this friend, and he tells me, and he was going on bitching about this other friend of his, and he was like, you know, he has this quirk that with us normally he's like, yeah, bro, this, that, whatever, and when we're in a group of girls, I think that they were based in London or somewhere, I don't remember. So yeah, international group. And then he was like, but as soon as we're in a group, he starts speaking in a very effeminate fashion, which I find that is so politically incorrect, first of all. And he's like, hey, like, with all the hand gestures and all of that.
Really?
And I was just hearing this passively. I was like, what the fuck? And then he was like, yeah. And then apparently this friend of mine called him out, like, what the fuck do you do, bro? Because that's not how you speak to us. And then this guy has this, and listen to his story, because that makes you feel like poor chap, because he just went on to say that, yeah, bro, actually the thing is that girls feel safe when I talk to them like that. Otherwise,
there's a reason for everything.
Otherwise, they'll think I'm hitting on them or something like that. So it's okay that they think I'm gay or whatever. I'm just like, my fucking lord, like, what level of crisis are we dealing with?
Yeah, no, exactly. When
Like,
men have to be like, well, I
yeah.
need to like disarm them somehow, so maybe I should talk a little bit softer.
It makes me just like, and that's exactly the point that you mentioned about being, high EQ, that then you feel sorry for them, and then you're like, may you heal. May
Yes,
you,
yeah.
like,
You're not going like, don't you fucking dare. This is what you're kind of like, hey,
yeah.
maybe that isn't the way, but I've heard you out and I understand. But poor chap, like.
Poor chap, yeah. So, I think, George, this has been lovely as usual. I love chatting with you because you have so much to say about everything.
Verbal diarrhea. What color is it?
Hashtag. Yeah, any parting thoughts?
Over the past 2 episodes, you've forced me to learn a little bit more about myself and a lot about you as well.
Thank you.
And I appreciate every type of person that you represent that is starting a creative journey, that is saying fuck you to the conventional way of doing things, and also just being you, just bringing that energy of like what it is. Thank you so much for supporting me in this journey. This amazing painting has been made by ours truly, George. Yes. And I don't think any of this would have been possible, and that's because of the energy you bring into the entire ecosystem. So thank you so much. Hope you guys had fun. Say by the rules. By the rules. Bye. Say bye. Say bye. Ciao.